Welcome back. One of the newest members of the House of Commons experienced a brutal case of heckling last week.
Eroded Canada's extra...
Order.
Toronto Centre's Chrystia Freeland was drowned out during her turn in question period, and she wasn't only attacked in the House. A journalist on Twitter said, "Put your big girl voice on." He later apologized, but it raised the question, do female members of Parliament still suffer from some form of sexism? Joining me now from Toronto, Liberal MP Chrystia Freeland, and here in the studio with me, New Democrat Nikki Ashton and Conservative Stella Ambler. First question to you, Ms. Freeland. What was going on in your head when you saw what was happening to you in the House, and what were the men yelling at you?
Well, I didn't hear what they were yelling at me. And what was going on in my head was I was really surprised that a rather dry, although important IMF report caused so much shouting.
Well, do you feel at all that maybe you were being attacked because you were a woman, or because, let's face it, you're kind of a liberal star and people were sort of going after you and heckling you for that?
Well, I'm not in the minds of the people who were shouting. But what I do think is the case is it's easier to shout down a woman. One of the comments on Twitter that I think sort of ignited a little bit of a social media storm around this was someone criticizing me for having such a high-pitched voice and saying that people's glasses were shattering because of it. You would never say that about a man. And so I think women can find themselves in a catch-22 situation where when we try to make ourselves heard, we're accused of being shrill. And I think that's a problem, because I think the people of Canada want women as well as men to be heard in the House of Commons. So,
Ms. Ambler and Ms. Ashton, you were there, you saw this. I mean, I think for a lot of us, we were kind of surprised by that behavior in the 21st century. What was going through your mind when you saw this as a woman?
Well, I think, first of all, I was sympathetic to Chrystia, because I know that it's difficult to speak in the House of Commons when you're being shouted at and heckled. I think it's difficult for anyone, and you do at a certain point have to learn how to just sort of tune it out. And I think as a new member, she probably didn't realize that she didn't have to speak any louder, that the microphones would pick it up. But that's not really the point. I think the point is that the journalist who made that comment is really, that was unacceptable and just completely inappropriate. I think it's certainly fair game, I think, to disagree. You know, I would say on the substance of the question or the statement that she was making, and but to talk about the tone of her voice or what a woman is wearing or how she's done her hair that day, I mean, I think we can all agree that that's just not acceptable.
But Ms. Ashton, this didn't seem to be sort of regular heckling. You got heckled sometime in the House of Commons. This seemed to go beyond that.
Absolutely, and it's unacceptable. In fact, it actually reminded me of the heckling I received when I asked my very first question in the House a number of years ago. I see it often, you know, directed towards many of my colleagues, especially young women. We also see that some of our colleagues who are openly gay men receive unusual heckling. And really what it does is it shows to what extent Canadian Parliament is out of touch with modern Canadian values, right? That absolutely Canadians want a diverse Parliament that many women are in, but we want to have real debates that are being, about real issues that are being brought forward about women and men.
So you think it in some ways is still an old boys club, a male institution and a male culture?
Sadly, I'd say it is. We see many signs of that. It's also encouraged by some of the inappropriate and unacceptable and sexist media attention, like Ms. Freeland experienced as well. And the thing is that you know, it's 2014. Things have to change, but the way they're going to change is by also making sure that we have policies and procedures within our parties, within the House of Commons, that make women welcome, that support women in politics, that support women to run, and that support issues that are also important to women in their day-to-day lives.
Ms. Freeland, did your House leader or the whip go to the Common Speaker and say, look, this kind of stuff has to stop? We are, after all, in the 21st century.
Yes, in fact, the Ontario Liberal Caucus is putting together, I'm not sure if they've sent it or not, a letter to the Speaker about this. And I really agree about standards having changed, community standards having changed. I'm new to the House of Commons, so I guess I have that sort of civilian perception. I really think that real, ordinary Canadians, Canadian civilians, the people who elected us, they want the House of Commons to be a place where everyone can speak, where everyone can be listened to, where there can be disagreement, but where it's not about screaming and shouting people down. And the social media response I had really persuaded me that a sort of civilized, meaningful discussion, that's what Canadians want, and that's what they expect us to be having on their behalf in Ottawa.
Well, she does raise a very good point about the media itself and the social media. I know you just joined Twitter, but there seem to be a lot of people who feel it's just okay to say very mean things, not just about women, in a very, very sexist way.
Mm-hmm. Well, the journalist, although I know he apologized, it was appalling and shocking that he would even come up with that. It also goes to show you that Twitter is a medium of reaction and not thoughtful reflection. But that aside, if I might just say about the heckling, that it's equal opportunity heckling. I mean, it's not just aimed at women in the House of Commons, or I mean, and all parties do it. I know our female cabinet ministers they're heckled just as much as anyone else. And I know that Ms. Freeland, she won a tough by-election in Canada's media centre. So you know, we're all pretty thick-skinned, I think, as members of Parliament. But I think that if we want to change the tone of the House of Commons, that it would be great to elect more women. We have 25% women now in the House of Commons. That's not high enough, and I'm involved in some initiatives actually to get more women to run for politics. I personally am not much of a heckler, and I would think, I don't have the numbers to prove it, but I would say probably more men are hecklers than women in the House of Commons. And so if we could get that number up to half, which is where it should be, I bet you that the decorum would improve immediately if that happened.
Ms. Ambler's basically saying women need to have thicker skin.
Mm-hmm. I gotta disagree on that point. I mean, this is what we need to do is address these issues head on, like we are today, saying that it is unacceptable. Sexism in Parliament, sexism in the media, sexism in our society is unacceptable, and we need to do a better job at making men understand this. And I would also disagree that it's an issue that comes from all parties. Yes, all parliamentarians heckle, but if you look at the way women are heckled, and as I mentioned also some of our gay members of Parliament as well, there is a difference, and we see how people are silenced essentially by the way they're heckled. I'm proud that in the NDP we have almost 40% women members of Parliament, and it makes a difference, and we can sensitize our colleagues about the issues that we're facing in a major way. But the reality is that equality for women in the House and equality for women in Canada is something that we haven't achieved, and that we have some hard work ahead of us to do. And I'm glad that we're talking about it. I sure hope that we can all act on it as well.
Well, thank you very much, and let's hope the next election we'll have more women in the House of Commons. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.